Morning class. Today we will cover class 9th chapter 5 self-pollination we have done, and today we will cover about the cross-pollination. See, in cross-pollination there is transfer of pollens from the anther of flower of one plant to the stigma of a flower of another plant of the same species. For example, we can see this diagram. These are two plants, plant A and plant B. So there is transfer of pollen grains from plant B to the flowers that are present on plant A to the stigma of this flower. So when they too are of the same species, but there is transfer of pollen grains from one plant of the same species to the other plant of the same species. So this is known as cross-pollination. Now we'll discuss about the advantages of the cross-pollination. See, the cross-pollination, it leads to the healthier offsprings. The seeds, they are abundant and they are viable in nature. The production of new varieties occurs due to cross-pollination because there is mixing up of the genetic makeup of the plants. Now the disadvantages. The cross-pollination, as it is always dependent on some pollinating agents, so sometimes it is not sure that this pollination will occur. So the certainty of cross-pollination is less. Secondly, large quantity of pollen grains need to be produced, which leads to the wastage of pollens, because the chances of pollination we have to increase, and for that, to ensure the chances of pollination, a large quantity of pollen grains needs to be produced, because if they are produced in less quantity, so they may not reach to the stigma. So if they are present in more quantity, some of them may be able to reach the stigma of the flower. That is why this process is uneconomical process for the plant, because when you have to attract some pollinating agent, it means that you have to either secrete some kind of nectar for the insects, or some kind of scenting smells should be secreted from the flower. The petals, they should be large, showy, colorful. So all these leads to the wastage of everything in the plant. So it is uneconomic process. Now there are certain conditions that favors cross-pollination in nature. First of all, there is unisexuality, that the flowers, they may either bear the gynoecium or androecium. So in such cases, self-pollination will not occur. Sometimes what happens, that a plant bears only either the male flowers or the female flowers. Like in papaya, we have two different trees, male tree and female tree. So in such cases, self-pollination cannot occur. So this is the condition that leads or that favors cross-pollination. Then second point is dichogamy. Dichogamy means the different timings of maturation of androecium and gynoecium. There are two conditions, protandry and protogyny. Protandry is the condition when the anthers mature earlier than the stigma. And protogyny is the opposite. Gyne, it is related with the stigma. So stigma mature earlier as compared to anther. So when one is maturing earlier, there is no chance of self-pollination. Third point is self-sterility. This is a condition in which if by chance the stigma, it receives the pollens from the anther of the same flower, but the anther, it fails to grow on that stigma. This leads to self-sterility. Fourth point is hercogamy, which means mechanical or structural barriers, they are present in some flowers, so that it prevent that the pollen grains, they cannot reach the stigma of the same flower. For example, in pansy flower, a mechanical hood is present which prevents the pollen grains reaching to the stigma. See, if it is a stigma, there is a mechanical hook present above this which prevents the fall of the pollen grains to this stigma. Fifth point is heterostyly. It means they are at different heights, which stops their self-pollination. Either the stigma is lying much below and the anthers, they are outreaching, they are very far from the stigma, so there is height difference between the two, or the stigma, it is much higher and the pollen grains, anthers, they are smaller. So these different height of the style of the stigma and anther, it leads to the cross pollination. It favors cross pollination. So this is all about cross pollination. In next video we will read about the agents of cross pollination. Thank you.